Welcome everyone to our class in how to plummet the depths of Torah. We're taking as a demonstration class the topic of Meitav Sedeu, Meitav Karma Yishalem. And we're using the various methods that we've learned and trying to integrate them more or less. And the reason why I say more or less is because the actual physically writing down all that, every single step is very, very important. It's just a question of, the time it's going to take. So we're going to integrate it more of a organic way as we're learning. I'll try to say, okay, here we have a raya and a parish and a memra, and here we have the conclusion of the syllogism is this, and now we're going to prove the opposite true, etc. Okay, what I did was I tried to really organize for myself a small list to keep in mind all the various elements that are being presented here. Every line of the Gemara is a new chiddush and a new movement. So I just tried to keep track of it. I'm just going to have a list, and I made this little list over here in English here. And I said, these are the questions, some of the questions. Of course, we're going to add to it, modify it as we go along, but as a start, these are the questions that must be clarified and understand the law of Meitav. Okay? So one, Meitav means the best field, in quote, the best. So we have an inference, a diuk, from that statement in the Chumash that you can't give the medium or the worst field. Okay, that's a minimum diuk. Then it says his field, so dehu, and we have the whole problem of who is the his. Is it relating to the mazik's best field or the nizak's best field? Then, which is going to have a this ramification. I don't know if I had it anymore. But who is this halacha aimed at? Okay, is it aimed at the mazik or is it aimed at nizak? And we'll explain that a little better as we go along. Then we have to explain, after we said in our little drush here, there's the ma and the lama. First we have to ascertain what universe or what field, so to speak, no pun intended, what field we're in. Once we locate who is, where this field is, so then we're going to, and then we're going to have to figure out why. After we know the what, we're going to have to say the why. Why did the Torah say give the best? Is it some sort of penalty, or is it fair compensation? If you don't give the best, there won't be a fair compensation, for instance. Okay, then some of the things, all things that have to be discussed is what was the damage? Okay, then the list here is just my working list, so we're going to make it better as we go along, but we have to determine also what was the damage. Okay, we said that there was the poel, the pool, the hefel, and the msubav. So what exactly was damaged here? Was it the best of the nizak's field, the worst of the nizak's field? Okay, then how was the damage done? So that's really the Gemara that was before us in Gimel over there, where it discussed this whole problem of shein and regel. But we have to know also what type of damage was done. Were the fruits eaten? Were the fruits soiled? Was the plant destroyed and couldn't regenerate? Could the plant, it was destroyed, could regenerate? So these are all details that we learned over there. Also with regel, the same thing. Were the fruits trampled upon? Was the plant totally destroyed? Could it regenerate? How much damage was done? That was really handled over there in Gimel, and basically what they decided over there is that however much damage was done, you are responsible for, whether it's completely destroying the plant or partially destroying the plant. The plant could regenerate. Right? That's all goes in the estimation of damage. Okay. Then we have other problems of how did this animal enter the field, because it says Vishilach, the owner send him there, he going on his own, and also over there in Gimel, they concluded that there's no difference whether the animal walked in by itself or whether the owner sent him in. Yeah, so was all solved over there. And then another problem is how much does a person have to guard his animal? That's later on in the Mishnah also. I mean, how much do you have to prevent? Okay, at what point do you consider it posheya? So those are all questions that have to be clarified. In the no-say, when we're trying to figure out what was the damage, how much was damaged. Now we're in the nasu here, and we're trying to figure out more precisely this meitav story, this meitav din, and we have to ask a few questions here. First of all, when it comes to estimating the damage, we could either pay more than was actually destroyed. In other words, the result will be you destroyed $10, you have to pay $20. You have to pay exactly what was destroyed. Or there's a possibility even you can pay less than what I'll show you in a minute. Okay, so first possibility, you pay more. Our first move that, according to Rabbi Shmuel, it was the field of the Nizak, and even if you damaged Kahusha, you would have to pay with Meitav. Okay, so that was rejected because it couldn't be rationally justified. There was no reason that we could think that the Kodesh Baruch Hu would just make a gezerah that if you destroyed the worst, you have to pay the best, whereas if you destroyed the best, all of a sudden you pay what there is. So you said that's neither a compensation or a knas. So the Gemara couldn't figure out any justification for that answer, so it had to move to the next possibility is no, you actually pay what you destroyed exactly, but when there's a doubt of which type was destroyed, then you have to pay for the best. In other words, we know if it was the worst of the best. So the Torah says in a suffix you have to pay the best. So that was a position that was maintained, but we said even though it could be rationally justified and it was a good position, but we ran into another barrier of abon tzricha or lavaraya, that when you extract money from someone, you have to have real proof, the Torah says. Whether it's a svara, as you said, it's a svara, but whether it's a pasuk, but they say it's a svara, so good, let it be a svara. The point is, money is where it is, and if you want to take it out of someone's possession, then the burden of proof is on you, and therefore, since it was a suffix, the least you can take out is kahusha, the weak stuff, and if you want to take more, you're going to have to bring proof. Then there's this other possibility, actually you could pay less than was actually destroyed. Jumping into this Mishnah, maybe I'll send it to you, but there's a Mishnah later on in Vav that says that when you pay for damages, you shamim beiso Ketzad Mishalemis Mashazika, Shomin Beisor Ba'oso Soda, Kamo Sha'asayafa, Ukamo Shahalafa. What you do is you don't measure, as the Bartanura will tell us, you actually don't look at the actual fruits that were damaged and say, okay, there was 15 pairs damaged, you have to pay me the value of 15 pairs. No, what you do is actually you have to check out a whole field and say, if I tried to sell this field with and without the loss of those 15 pairs, what would be the difference in that? That's what I pay. So there, it's a very big chiddush that they learned from Sedei Acher, that Yishamin Acher, and that really is to the benefit of the mazik. Okay? So you could see that you can actually pay less than you were destroyed. But that's it. Now, since the Gemara rejected two possibilities. We'll go over the Gemara just to get us warmed up. Two possibilities of what this Meitav is doing. both those possibilities had to do with payment. Either Meitav means that if you destroyed the worst, you still have to pay the best. As if you destroyed the best, we rejected that. That had no basis. But then the second possibility was if there was a suffix of what you destroyed, then you always pay the best. The Gemara rejected that because of Hamotzi Mechaber Olav Araya. So then we moved from the field, and we said, no, this has nothing to do with evaluation. It has to do with how you pay for damages. Okay, what form of currency is acceptable, I wrote here. So basically, we have three forms of currency. I mean, if you're not going to barter, so, and then, by the way, the Mishnah says in the second Mishnah that you have to show him the damage. I didn't bring that Mishnah, but you have to evaluate the damage and into money terms, and then he has to pay it in money terms. But money is cash. That's one form of money. The other form of money, movables, movable items, they call shaveh kesef, that have worth. And the third type is real estate. Okay, so in our pasuk, all of a sudden, when it comes to real estate, the Torah demands give him the best of real estate, and we moved into when you're trying to pay this debt to the person that you damaged, you have to, and you decide you're going to do it with real estate, you have to give them the best piece of land. Okay, where that best piece of land, we had a question what the best piece of land is according to the best of what the Nizak has, according to the best of what the Mazik has, or maybe we have to figure in the world price of land. That's going to be a whole problem. We conclude that you have to, according to Rabbi Kiva anyway, you have to give the best of your land irrespective of what the Nizak has or what the world price is. Then we said, so now we've figured out the what. We've localized the what of this din of Meitav. The Gemara's conclusion is the what of this din of Meitav is it's the repayment in money terms, I mean for the damage. Now the question is, what can you use? When you use land, all of a sudden you have to use the best land. So that's the what. Now we want to know for the why, lama. Okay, so we have a couple of possibilities here of why the best land is the only acceptable payment. Why would the Torah say best? Okay, so these are, again, we can add to it, change it to, but these are some of the things that came to my mind. The one idea for giving the best is that we're trying to protect the nizak. Okay, what does that mean? So we have two possibilities what the nizak wants to do. Either he wants to convert the land you're giving him into money, or he wants to use the land. Those are two possibilities that I came to. So if it's a question of converting the land into cash, so by giving the nizak the best land, we're making it easier for him to convert the land into cash. Of course, it's easier to sell best land than worse land or even medium land. The other possibility that I thought too was it's a question of usage. He wants to actually plant in this land. So if you want to, he's a farmer. I mean, after all, you destroyed his produce. He's a farmer. So maybe the idea is to make it easier for him to actually use the land. Okay, so that's aside in the protecting the nizak's rights. Okay, either making it easier to convert or making it easier to use. The other possibility is that it's a punishment of the mazik. Okay, normally he should be able to give anything that's worth kesef. So, but maybe what we're trying to do is punish the mazik. And there's two types of punishments that I thought about. There's preventatives and there's punitives and punishments. So preventative, it's an incentive to watch the animal from damaging. It's an incentive for the person to watch his animal from damage because he stands to lose his best land. So he'll be shaking and make sure that his animal's properly protected so that he won't end up losing his best land. And if it was the worst land, he'll say, they're not worth so much. I don't have to be so lax. The other one is called punitive, a punishment. And we say, look, you're such a bad guy that you destroyed the other person's field. We're going to punish you for not being a good boy, and we'll teach you a lesson that you won't do that again. Okay, so those are some of the ideas that I'm putting out here, and I think the beauty of this study is that there's the the surface level of this, which is the simple moves in the Gemara, and then there's the deeper level, which is thinking about the interaction between the reasons why HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us this law and the technical aspects of how it's being presented, okay, logically, you know, what the inferences are and how it exists in other contexts. So it's that type of involvement that gets us past the surface level and into the real issues at stake and a deeper understanding of why people are saying what they're saying. It's just not simply that repeating over what they heard from their teacher, which is true, but what they heard from their teachers is also a analysis of the law and trying to make this law make the most sense, because after all it does come from Kodesh Baruch Hu. So it's a verse in the Torah. It's and therefore it has to make a lot of sense. So that's my basic overview. Now, the other thing that I wanted to present to you, this is something that I'm working on, I haven't done it yet, is what I'd like to do, be able to do, is to present a roadmap of understanding. What is a roadmap of understanding? What do I mean by roadmap of understanding? What I mean like this. The Gemara always starts from the literal meaning of the words. What it says, what it means. That's always where we start. And many times that's where we end up too. But when there's a roadblock in front of us because the literal meaning of the words don't make sense either because of what we call common sense or because of other rules that we have. So then we have to make a turn in the road and we have to now redefine what the words mean. Okay? Now, that road is clearly laid out in the Gemara. The Gemara, everything's up front. They're telling you very clearly where we started from and why and how we ended up. And because we're looking at a page just of text, so sometimes it's hard to keep track of that roadmap and to see the twists and turns and why we did what we did. So one of the things I would like to be able to do is, after we do this reading the text, understanding the text, is then to show in a roadmap style how the text moved from the simple meaning to a more sophisticated meaning. Okay, a lot of people like the Karaites. A lot of people when they blame the rabbis, and undo the rabbis. Is the Kodesh Baruch Hu's text is a very deep text, and it's really, I mean, this word program, I mean, the old one used to have 9 million words of code in it. Okay, so underneath what just we're typing there's a whole world, you know, and the Torah, from the Kodesh Baruch Hu, so it's the same way. So what we have to do is not just read the simple level, but understand that the simple level is going to mean different things and where we started from. And Baruch Hashem, we have a very clear roadmap of where we started and we're going to end up. Okay, and that's the excitement of, I believe the excitement of learning is the clarity of what was presented and how we went from point A to point Z and the interaction between the text and the various svaras. Okay, so that was a very, very large introduction, but that's basically what I'm trying to do in this type of presentation. Okay, so is that more or less clear? I talked a lot of you. Okay.
Yeah, I think we got it.
Okay, Beseda. So we started off with the pasuk. We're going to go rather quickly again. I just like to get our minds focused again. We started off the pasuk that concluded its din with Meitav Sdei Meitav Shalom, and we noticed that the Mishnah said Tashlumei Nezek b'Meitav Haaretz. You have to pay, you have to l'shalom, chayav amazik l'shalom, you have to pay, but t'shlumei nezek b'meitav haaretz. Okay, and the Rosh, the divrei maskil here is l'shalom t'shlumei nezek. Okay, now first thing the Gemara did when it came to this din was to bring this brisa. And the brisa is an analysis of the pasuk and trying to focus us on where this field is located. Okay, and we have a machlokas between Rebbe Shmuel and Rebbe Akiva, and Rebbe Shmuel, he says we're talking about the field of the Nizak, and Rebbe Akiva says the field of the Mazik, and then Rebbe Akiva makes an extension, and he says Kal v'chomer, this din will apply to Hegdish. Okay, so our first shot, as we said, the first shot of the Gemara was literal, handling Rebbe Shmuel, who was problematic because we said normally if we're talking about payment, we're talking about the payment of the Mazik. What does the Nizak have to do with it? That's what the Mazik has to pay. So Rebbe Shmuel is problematic. What he means that it's the field of the Nizak, and we said the first literal understanding of him is that if you always pay according to as if you damage the best of the Nizak, even if you damage the worst. So as we said in this rather long introduction, so that didn't make sense. We had no way to justify that. So then we had to redefine Rebbe Shmuel's statement that it's definitely not talking about paying more than what you did. The Torah is not imposing that, no way to justify that. So we had Rev Idi Bar Avin said that we're talking about where there's a suffix. Okay, now that could be justified, okay, but the Gemara now cuts it off and explains why. We're going to now, the Gemara replaces that svara of suffix with the svara of tashlumin. And that's a move. You see, that's what I call the roadmap. In the roadmap here, we hit an objection of Rava that that there's no reason. We have a rule that you can't pull out more from the money of the person that you're trying to claim from than what proof that you have. And just don't have a proof. It's only a suffix that he damaged the best, so you can't extract the money. So because of that, we pushed to the next level of interpretation by saying we're talking about how.
Well, I would say the roadblock really was the first question.
Yeah, that was the first. That's
what's supposed to go for the highway and onto the side road to be able to determine what Rabbi Shmuel is saying.
Yeah, now
Rabbi Shmuel.
Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel.
Yeah, Rabbi Shmuel. Right?
Now, yeah, but the point, very good that you stopped me there. There's always steps that are understood but not spelled out in the Gemara, right? So the Gemara's first position was yes, that was a possibility. But what it did is it rejected it at hand. You know what I'm saying? In other words, if I read, why was that a good position? Because that's the simplest position in understanding Rebbe Shmuel. That he says you always have to pay according, if you're talking about estimation of damage, the simplest explanation of Rebbe Shmuel is that you pay as if you damage the best of the Nizak's field. You hear what I'm saying? That's the most literal meaning of Rebbe Shmuel. Right. Now that is rejected by this Ochel Shmein Misham Shmeina Ochel Kachushim Misham Shmeina. That's a rejection. But before a rejection, we had it as a possibility. Okay, you know what I'm saying? So we had a simple possibility based on the simple meaning of his words, which was that Meitav Steu Shel Nizak, as if you have to pay all the time, as if you damage the Meitav Sedeu of the Nizak, even if you damage the worst. And the Gemara says, rejects that out of hand. Like no one will hold such a position because there's no way to justify it, because as we went through it, it has nothing to do with replacement because you're paying more than what you damaged. And even if you say it's a kanas, there's no reason to have a kanas only on the weak stuff and not on the strong stuff. And make a kanas, use a kanas across the board. Why? You're encouraging this guy, he sa's, when he sends in his animal, you're encouraging him to eat the best stuff, right? Because then you're always going to pay and get caught, so let him get, why should he eat the weak stuff? So it doesn't, that is, we had a possibility and a rejection very quickly in the Gemara. And that wasn't even a position held by anybody, but it had to be eliminated because it's the simple meaning of the words, the basic simple meaning of the words. Okay, you hear what I just did? It goes very quickly in the Gemara, so you have to fill in all those spaces. What you would have thought, why you would have thought it, and why now it's being rejected. Those are the three moves that we learned, and that's really from the Darkei Gemara. What you would have thought, why you would have thought it, and why now is it being rejected. Okay, right. Great. Yep. So then we came up with what I call a rational possibility of a suffix. That eliminates paying more. Just one-sided paying more. That's a good possibility. It's even held by Ravidi Bar Avin. But Rava came along and he said, no, we have to reject that. We can't go down. Even though that was the next best possibility. If we're saying that you have to pay according to the best of the field of the Nizak, so the first possibility, no matter what you destroyed, is the best of the field. So that we rejected out of hand. Okay, the second possibility is a suffix. That improves the situation because it's rational that if you have a suffix, maybe you go l'chumra. Why not? But that was rejected by Rava and accepted by the Gemara as a rejection because the general rule is that you have to prove that you owe the person money, and here you haven't proved it's a suffix. You don't take money out from another person on a suffix. Okay, so then we move to this third possibility. Okay, and which is a possibility we're going to accept. But if we would have started here, you say, how did we get to such a place, right? So what are we saying? We're talking to Torah when it says meitav means that you pay exactly what you damaged, but if you're going to use money, then you'll either have to give money according, if you say, excuse me, not use money, that's a mistake. If you're going to give him land,
right.
Shavikasov, meaning land here, because we said meitav sedeh, we're not moving that away. So if you're going to use land to repay him, you have to pay him back with the best of whose land? Okay, that'll be a machlokas. So Rabbi Shmuel says you have to pay him always with the best of his land. And Rabbi Akiva is even more machmir. He says, no, you have to pay him with the best of your land. Okay, so even if your worst land is equal to the best of his land, you have to give him the best. Okay, and that's where we held before the how. But at this point I ask you a why. You see, we can't run away from the why. You know what I mean? First of all, why did the Torah demand this? You see, so it's either fair compensation somehow or it's a penalty. Okay, so you have to spell that out. So you have an idea, you can spell it out. Okay. Okay. So okay. So that yeah. Okay. Good. So good. So that's also going to be handled by the Gemara. Okay, but it's something that you have to think of. It's the why. You know. Okay. Now we understand the what. Very good. When you pay in money, you're going to have to pay with the best of your land when you're paying back in money, either up to the level of the nizak or no, up to your level. Fine. Okay, so we'll leave it at that. Now, the next piece of the Gemara that we did is discussed the lumdus, which were the technical aspects of how we came to this conclusion. Okay, because simply speaking, we said that the simple pasuk is that if you're going to say when you use land, you have to pay the best. The simple meaning is you have to use the best of the mazik, because the pasuk is talking about tashlumin of the mazik. What do we get the nizak in? So there we had a gzera shava. Okay, that's also what some people say. The simple text tells us there's a gzera shava that moves the payment into the field of the nizak. That's how Rabbi Shmuel learns. And therefore, the cap of the payment is to the value of what the nizak's best land is. Okay? And Rabbi Akiva, of course, rejects that. And Rabbi Shmuel does have to handle the pashtus of the pasuk, we said. Okay, you have to end also the pashtus. It is talking about the nizak. So he says, in this case, where the idis of the nizak is in between the idis and the zibris of the mazik, so in that case, we don't know what to do, right? So there, Rabbi Shmuel says, the pasuk says, go according to the meitav of the mazik. There in other words, he found a place, what do they say? The pasuk saying, ein yotzim mipishuto, ein kro yotzim mipishuto. So he found the pashtus meaning of the pasuk, but only that is a sub-din of the okay? So that's what we got. All right. So now in our continuation, okay, what can I do? Now we'll do this little piece together. It's not going to be our central focus, but again, what it is going to teach us here is, you see, that the Torah has has connections that extend beyond the literal verse. Okay, so here we're dealing here in payment, and Rabbi Akiva is now going to make another extension to Hegdish. Okay, he's going to make another extension. He's going to say it's a kal v'chomer, and that's what he said in the text. And now we need a parish of that, and we'll see why. So we need a parish of that. Okay, so we can just use the Gemara inside, whatever you're more comfortable with. Doesn't really matter. You have the Gemara there in front of you, or should I put it on the board? Or okay. Okay, so let's go through that, just to be complete, even though it's not a basic issue. But okay, go ahead. Rabbi Akiva Omer.
Leibar Kasav?
Yes.
Yeah. Leibar Kasav, Ligvais Lenizakin Mina Idis. Vakavachem Lahektish.
Good. That's the statement he made.
He's saying that he's saying that the pasuk is coming to tell you that you collect the nizakin idis and kavachem like this. So basically, what he's saying is that it's idis from mazik.
Right. That's what we're learning. Right.
Kavachem like this. We don't know yet what this means. We'll have to see later on tomorrow.
Well, we know that this din of collecting from your best has to be done with Hegdish also. Not only Chulin, which is what we're talking about, Friends Field, but this extension to Hegdish, and that's a Kal V'chomer. I mean, if this works in Chulin, so certainly it should work with Hegdish. That's what he's saying. Okay, so now let's go through the investigation of the second statement of Rabbi Akiva. Go ahead. My Kal V'chomer Hegdish.
The Mal Kal V'chomer Hegdish. Let me just find it in the Gemara.
Yeah, please.
Not Kavachem like this. What does it mean Kavachem? Even Lamed the Nagach to the Dan to the Hegdish. You're going to say we're talking about a case that a person's shar damaged a shar of Hegdish, right? And that would be saying Kavachem Hegdish that you're obligated to pay. That doesn't make sense. Because Shorei Ehu or Machman of Shosha Hektish. So it's Dafka Shorei Ehu. And not a Shosha Hektish. The Shosha Hektish, seemingly, the Gemara is understanding from the pasuk of Shorei Ehu that it's excluding the Shosha Hektish where there's no obligation to pay.
Right. So you can't say Kal V'chomer to Hegdish when there's no obligation to pay. Okay.
So what does it mean?
And again, you notice we start, and this is I want to bring this out because it's a little move, but it's so important. We always start with the most literal meaning of the text, right? If he says Kal V'chomer Hegdish, and we're talking about Hezek, we're talking about Hezek of a Chiloni of a Chol shore. So the extension be to goring a Hegdish shore. That's the literal or simplest meaning of the text. So now we show that can't be because the pasuk excludes damage completely. So now we go to the next step over. We had the obstacle, so we have to go around it now and push it to the the left. Okay, go ahead.
So we're going to say that Pasuk is coming to tell us something else.
Mm-hmm.
To collect money zakin mina idios. So Kavachayim.
No.
No, one back, my mistake. Ela la'im harei le'im mana lebedek habayis. The asik is b'v'shachol me idios. So it's coming to tell you a din that if somebody is obligated to pay money to Hektish,
Right. He gives exactly. He gives some money to the Beit Mikdash, yeah.
So the Gizbar could come and collect it from Idios. The Gizbar could say, okay, I want to take the money from your Idios.
Right. So we're not talking about at all Nazikin anymore, because there is no din in Nazikin. So now we move to a whole different din, the din of Balchov. Okay,
right.
you gave tzedakah to the Beis Hamikdash, and now you're a little late in paying or whatever, and the gizbar knocks on the door. Okay, give me your idis.
Right.
Okay, good. So what's the objection to that?
The objection to that is, the Gemara says, Lo yehi ela bal chayv. Why should Hektish be different than a bal chayv? Right? A bal chayv is the bainus.
Stop. Beautiful move.
And so therefore they're saying that, well, so let's analyze this. But the Gemara is really saying, okay, that you want to say that the Pasuk is coming to tell you a din, that when a person obligates himself and owes money to Hektish, that Hektish is a right to take his best. So the Gemara is saying, what really happens here, what really is going on here is that Hektish is becoming a Baal Chayiv to this person. Then really what we have to do is look at Dinei Baal Chayiv. And
that's right.
It should be the same din. There is no reason at this point the Gemara can think of why, if the person is obligated to Hektish as a Baal Chayiv, that Hektish should have any more rights than a regular Baal Chayiv should have. There's no
beautiful. And you see how you're talking so well, because of course there's room to manipulate, because maybe Hektish has more rights than Baal Chov, but more rights than Baal Chov. I mean, maybe Schumra, who knows? But the Gemara is, at this point exactly, is saying there's no rational reason or no proof to say that this should be anything more than a Baal Chov. Good. Let's keep going.
One second. Maybe he holds that every Baal Chayiv collects from Idyas. So that would mean to say, then we can understand, or seeing the Gemara saying that we can understand why the Torah would have to tell us a Chiddush that the Gizbar also collects from Idyas. So embedded in this question, really the Gemara is saying that once we understand that a Hektish is like a Baal Chayiv, and a Baal Chayiv gets from Idyas, then you have to say another sideshow is, or subtext is that without the pasuk telling us that the Gizbar collects from Idyas, we would not have known it. We just thought that it's different than a regular Baal Chayiv. Kamash from the pasuk tell you that's like a regular Baal Chayiv, and therefore he gets Idyas.
Right.
Right?
Right. Good.
So the Gemara says, no, that's not true. You can ask a question on that. Even though Rabbi Kiva holds everything Baal Chayiv is the Idyas, you could say, Mal Baal Chayiv, Shekein Yafa Kayche Bin Zakin. You could say a Baal Chayiv who is obligated money due to damages, he's Yafa Kayach. Time of the Hektish, Shahura Kayche Bin Zakin. I'm sorry, but I think I said the wrong shot here.
Good.
I think what Gemara is doing is that the Gemara is now telling you there are different levels of types of Baal Chayiv. There's a Baal Chayiv who has a Yafa Kayach, and a Baal Chayiv who has a Hayra Kayach.
Okay. Now, if I could use some of our methods here. Remember, Rebbe Akiva's using a Kal V'chomer to generate a din that exists in the Zikin and extend it to, here we're saying Hegdish, right?
Right. Even
though it's a Baal Chov and Hegdish, right? But it's Hegdish, okay?
Right.
But he's using a Kal V'chomer. So now, if Chulin pays with Meitav, so certainly Hegdish in Balchov pays Meitav. Okay, so now they're going to break up that Kal V'chomer by showing that there's no Kal V'chomer. That you thought that Hegdish is more Chumrah than Balchov, but I'll show you it's not true.
Right. Okay. Right. Oh, we're going back on the Kal V'chomer. Okay.
Yeah. So let's do that slowly again. V'chitemo call Balchov nami be'idis, and therefore spell it out. That means we'd learn our din from Chulin to Balchov, and it has no. We're out of really.
From Chulin to Hektish.
Excuse me, from Hegdish.
That a Balchov, that Hektish also collects Idyas.
Even though he's a Balchov, right? It's very, very interesting. I mean, we mixed the term here. Because we're saying that Hegdish is just a simple Balchov, right? There's no special quality to Balchov, anyone you owe money to. So what does that have to do with Hegdish, B'chlal? That's another side. Forget about that. But I mean, that's a side problem. Okay, but let's just go here. Right? I'm trying to learn from Nezikin, from Rebbe Kiva's statement that if Nezikin pays in Meitav, so Balchov and Hegdish pays in Meitav. Right? So now what are we going to do here? What's the pircha?
So the pircha is that a Balchov is Yafa Karcha ben Nezikin. So it has a certain chumrah, Hegdish Shahira Karcha ben Nezikin. Now, is this pircha related to one second. We're establishing what the chiddush is in Hektish, right? The chiddush is that Hektish pays Idyas. Right, and Balchov also, we're saying Rabbi Kiva holds Balchov also pays in Idyas.
Yes.
Okay, so now we have a pircha on the Kal V'chomer.
Even if Balchov, you could say pays in Iddis, but I can't learn Hegdish from Chulin.
Right.
Even though it's a Balchov. Why? Because a Balchov, there's a reason to extend the din of Meitav from Nezikin.
Right.
But because it's better than Nezikin, we'll have to explain why. You'll read Rashi. But Hegdish worse than Nezikin. So there's no reason to extend the din of Iddis to Nezikin, to Hegdish, I'm sorry, to Balchov, and therefore the Kal V'chomer breaks down. If I show you that it's Hegdish is weaker than, yes, Hegdish is weaker than Chulin, so then I can't generate the din. Okay, let's. You want to look at Rashi over there?
Yeah, let's see Rashi.
Yeah.
Rashi is Balchov b'beinis. Afilu hachi loy gamin hegdish minei. Even if you're going to say Rabbi Akiva holds that a Balchov is the Idyas, still you cannot learn hektish from Balchov, from Nezikin. The Yigalim mal Balchov can yafa karcha min Nezikin shed you noto hazeka min Idyas. So the v'chit hema is really not related to the pircha. The pircha is a Kal V'chomer unto itself. Isn't that what Rashi saying? We have a pircha on this Kal V'chomer, right?
We're saying well. Let's go. Okay. First, we said that it's a Balchov, right? Hegdish is just a Balchov, right? So we said if it's a Balchov, then it's Baininus, right? So we said, wait a minute. Not everybody holds a Balchov as din is Baininus. You can hold a Balchov, its din is Iddis. Okay, right. So that's no problem now. A Balchov does pay Iddis. Our only problem is, and Hegdish is Balchov, right? Right. But Hegdish is different and maybe it's weaker than Bal Chov, and we can't learn it from Nezikin, B'chlal. Very,
Right.
very. Why can't we learn it from Nezikin?
Because Nezikin is better than Hektish.
Exactly.
It's not a Kal and a Chomer. Hektish is not a Chomer.
Now, is there another Rashi there on the page? I don't have it in front of me. I should put it on there. Does Rashi explain Malabal Chov Shem?
He says just as time back to Hayrakach bin Zakan, the Shakal Nezek Midi.
The low shakel, that's very important, Rashi.
Right.
What does that mean?
That the time back to Hayrakach bin Zakan, the low Shakal Nezek Midi. That the Nezek, I don't know what this means.
Oh, it means, because what did we establish before? We established that we're holding the position that when you damage a Hegdish shore, you don't pay at all. So you see, Hegdish is weak because when you damage the Hegdish shore, you don't pay at all.
So therefore, it's weaker. So therefore, it has the Kula.
And therefore you can't learn from the Zekin.
Right.
Because in Zekin, when you damage another person's animal, you have to pay. But Hegdish, when you damage another person's animal, you don't have to pay.
Right.
So Hegdish is weaker, is more kal than Nezikin. So even if you tell me that Nezikin is a case of Bal Chov, we have to discuss that also. And monolithic bias is even a Bal Chov, that's fine, right? So you have to pay with Iddish your Chov back if you use land, but that has nothing to do with that case of Hegdish. It's B'chal not a Kal V'chomer Hegdish, because Hegdish turns out to be much weaker than the case of Chulin.
Right.
So you can't learn it. You can't learn it from Hegdish. Now, okay. Now, if I were to write out all these syllogisms, which we could do, I mean, it would just take time, but it adds a tremendous amount of clarity. Okay, because you have to keep straight. We have here we're trying to. What's our aim here? We're trying to set up the Kal V'chomer to Hegdish, talking about a mana that someone gave to Bedek Abayis, which is a Bal Chov, and we're saying even there you're going to have to pay him back with the best of your land. And I'm going to learn that through Kal V'chomer. So we said, even if you're going to hold that Bal Chov does pay in Iddish, you can't learn a Kal V'chomer from Nezikin to Hegdish, because Hegdish is weaker, because it doesn't pay. Okay. Now, it's also interesting, another interesting question here. I mean, whenever you get into any Gemara, it's just it's a exciting world underneath. But when you're paying for your damages, what is your position?
What do you mean?
Are you replacing the damage, or are you just a Bal Chov who owes someone money? In other words, I go to the store, right, and I buy something. Now I'm a Bal Chov, or I loan money from someone. I'm a Bal Chov. That means I'm obligated to pay some money, right? Now, when I damage someone, is that the same status as a Bal Chov? Or am I in a worse position because he never agreed to give me the product? He never agreed to give me the loan. Okay, I destroyed his property. So now maybe I'm worse than a Bal Chov. It's true I owe him money, but I owe him money in a different right? Because I really have to replace what I lost. It's not a question of when you buy something, you get an object and then you owe the person money, okay? If you loan money, you got the money and then you give the person, you have to give the money back to the person, okay? But here, what did he get? And what did you get? You got nothing. He didn't want to give you the cow. You destroyed the cow. So now it seems that you could say that this is worse than a Bal Chov, but the Gemara is saying, no, this is just Hezek is in a certain way a Bal Chov, because if it's the way I'm saying, then you couldn't learn Bal Chov, you couldn't learn Hegesh or anything from it. But it's just an interesting question. You know what I'm saying? The interesting question is the relationship between paying something back and the process that you got into paying it back. I think it's the strengths and weakness of each. But anyway, the Gemara here is an equation and saying, no, when you're Nazikin, you're just paying back. You have a chov to pay back. That's all. You damn. There's no special thing in Nazikin. Okay. So anyway, that was just something that came up here. So let's go now. So we had to now eliminate. You see, in our logic here, Dektunos, we have what's called a dilemma, right? Because when we're trying to figure out the Kal V'chomer, we say to ourselves, if it's talking about damages of a shore, of damage of a hegdish shore, well, it says shore ehu. Elamai, it's talking about hegdish of giving money to bayis, right? So then it's a chov, and you can't learn the chiyuv of meitav to a chov because hegdish is very weak when it comes to nazikin. So it has a kula, so maybe it doesn't pay meitav. How do you know? So we're stuck. We're on what we say. We're stuck on the horns of a dilemma. I present two possibilities. This is called manavshach, right? I say if you go to the side that we're talking about hezek of hegdish, well, you don't have to pay. If you go to the side we're talking about mana which is a balcho, well, you can't learn it from balcho, from hegdish, so you're stuck. So this is called being impaled on the horns of a dilemma, because no matter which way you turn, you can't claim the Kal V'chomer of Rebbe Akiva. Okay? So now there's two ways to get out of a dilemma. One is called grabbing the bull by the horns, and the other one is called escaping through the horns. Okay? So, which means escaping through the horns is we create another possibility that you didn't think about. Well, you thought there was only damages and loans. I'll find another possibility. Or I break one of the horns and I say the objection that you had on one side is not an objection. That's what the Gemara is going to do now. So let's read that.
Okay, so the Gemara is going to say,
Le'olam.
So we're going back and we're saying that we're not talking about any pledges to hektish. We're talking about real damages.
Correct.
Our shar damaged the shar shel hektish. That you should be potter, because it says shar ehu shar shel hektish. He holds the Reb Shimon ben Menashe. So what does Reb Shimon ben Menashe hold? We're going to quote it. We're going to into the Freisa. Reb Shimon ben Menashe, I'm a shor shel hektish, and a shor shel hedyet potter, but a shor shel hedyet, shenog a shor shel hedyet, bein tam, bein muad, mishalim, nezek shalim. So we have this Mandi Omar, Reb Shimon ben Menashe, who holds not like the drasha of Shari Ehu. He holds that you have an obligation to pay. A person, a private shar, that damaged a shar shel hektish has to pay.
Exactly. Right. So he's going to show Shorei, who, how is he going to darshan the pasuk?
How is he going to darshan the pasuk?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Shor shel hektish, shor shel hedyet, this potter, he's going to say, because he'll say Shorei is when you have to pay, but shor shel hektish is potter.
Right.
He'll do it just the other way around. Okay, so we grab that horn, and in order, again, notice we came to a block, and that block forced us to go around, which means a dochek. Because normally we like to say that Rebbe Akiva is holding like the Chachamim, right? We like to say everybody's holding like the Chachamim, the majority opinion. But here, since we were trapped on this horns of the dilemma, we have to say it's really only holding like this Yachid of Rebbe Shimon ben Menashe. Okay, but we're not done. Ihachi. Okay, let's just see if we can. We'll just finish up this piece quickly. I mean, not quickly. What time? Yeah.
We have about 5 minutes.
Oh, good. Excellent. Very good. Excellent. Oh, that's good. So we don't have to rush so much. Okay. Ihachi. Now, notice very well that whatever the beauty, again, this is all in Dr. Mark, the beauty is when you give an answer, you always have to check out whether that is not going to lead to other problems. Okay. You just can't give an answer and run. So the Gemara gave a nice answer here that Rabbi Akiva now very good. He holds like B'Shimon Menashe, and you do have to pay for sure that he hits Hegdish, and that's why he's learning the Kal V'chomer. Probably that's why Rabbi Shmuel disagrees with him. He doesn't like Rabbi Shimon Menashe or whatever. So then the Gemara says, Yihachi, if that's true, very nice. You solve the problem of the Kal V'chomer. Go ahead.
So we're going to say that Ihachi, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva, might it just the nizik v'ziburos the mazik pligi. If that's the case, how do you know Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva are arguing in the case where it is the nizik and ziburos the mazik dilma dekul yalma b'denizik shaymina? Maybe really everybody holds b'denizik shaymina. V'achava pukti Rabbi Shimon Menashe v'Rabbanan kamefagi. And maybe the machlokes between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva is really the same machlokes as Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe and the Rabbanan. Rabbi Akiva Savar Shimon ben Menashe, Rabbi Shmuel Savar Rabbanan.
Which means they're only arguing on the Kal V'chomer, it looks like. Anyway, this is a very interesting objection. Okay. If already you came to a position that there's an essential machlokus between the Chachamim and Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe and Rabbi Akiva is holding one hand, so let's say that Rabbi Shmuel is holding the other side. So really everybody holds with the Nizik Shaminan, and they're only really arguing the Kal V'chomer the Hegdish, that's all. Rabbi Shmuel says, I can't make a Kal V'chomer the Hegdish because I don't hold Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe. And Rabbi Akiva says, yes, I can make a Kal V'chomer Hegdish because I hold Rabbi Shimon. So they're really only holding they're really only arguing on that point. Might say that's man. Really, they all agree. Everyone agrees really that you pay for the nizak. Okay, that's the objection here.
1 second.
Okay.
So in order to say that they agree that by a regular person that they say b'denizik shaymina. As we know, there's a machlokes Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva. That's clear.
Correct.
Question is, what is the machlokes? So if you could say that the machlokes is the same machlokes as Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe and Chachamim, and that they agree that b'denizik shaymina, so that would work out fine.
Yeah. Maybe because Rabbi Akiva said two things. He said lo ba'kosav el legvot min hanazikin, but he also said the Kal V'chomer lahegdish. So right. Maybe it's the Kal V'chomer lahegdish that they're arguing about, and not the first din of.
Right. So no, the lo ba'kosav legvot min hanazikin is just that Rabbi Shmuel will agree to.
Right.
Even though what we.
No, Rabbi Akiva will agree to. That's what they're saying. We have to answer. We have to ask why. Why does everybody holds like the Mazik Shaminan? Okay, we have to answer that question. But the Gemara is not doing that. They're saying
right,
really.
That's something else. Yes,
okay.
That's that also.
Yeah, but here they're saying that maybe everyone agrees, but the Nizik Shaminan.
Right, and machlokes is just in hektish.
Yeah, whether you can make a Kal V'chomer hektish or not.
Right. Right, okay. I can hear that.
Okay. So now the Gemara is going to eliminate that possibility. Let's see it.
1 second. I just stepped away from the Gemara for 1 second.
Yeah, I understood.
Let me get a cup of coffee. Okay. Okay. So now we're going to say that they're arguing only in Hekdesh. So what does the Gemara say? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva said, Rabbi Shmuel Stavak Rabbanan, and came my loy boha kosev. So the Gemara is saying that the words in the of loy boha kosev are problematic.
Why? Because that's mashma that they're arguing in the din and meitav. They're not only arguing the kal v'chomer.
Right.
Very nice. Theoretically, they have a machlokus in Rebbe Tzimrim Nasher the Chacham. That's very nice. But you can't explain this text. The text says lo boha kosev ela, and then he says kal v'chomer to hekdesh.
Right. Who
Right.
says loy boha kosev? That's what Rabbi Akiva says. Rabbi Akiva says loy boha kosev ela. So in other words, the words of loy boha kosev are indicators that he's coming to exclude something.
Exactly, and that he's arguing, and that he's arguing also with Rebbe Shmuel about the pasuk.
Right.
There's two dinim here. There's what the pasuk means in the Zikin, and there's the extension to Hegdish. There's two dinim here, and he wrote both. He said lower bo kasavel likvotum Zikin mina idis. So how are you going to explain that line?
Right.
Okay, on dochek, okay, va'od.
Va'od ha'amar Rashi.
No. Imkain. Yeah, okay. Imkain my lobo kasiv. No.
Va'od my kal v'chomer l'hekdesh. Oh, what is the kal v'chomer l'hekdesh? What is the problem with the saying kal v'chomer l'hekdesh? So if you're going to say that they both agree, so what's the problem with the kal v'chomer l'hekdesh?
Good question.
So Rashi says, "Hayol min idjis the ka'amar Rabbi Akiva and nizik kai v'la akule asa the yahavlein mazik miziburis my kal v'chomer l'hekdesh k'rei used to have a Rabbi Akiva yavakayach the hekdesh b'nizakin the amar da afilu have a mazik tam shakal hekdesh nezik shalom and afkalei mireyehu." Okay, so you see, without Rashi, we would not understand what this means here.
Exactly. Rashi is. There's no one like Rashi. No, this text would be closed to us. But what is he saying? Yeah.
Yeah, what he's saying is that from the pasuk, what is Rabbi Akiva saying? That you're collecting from the nizik.
That's the supposition here.
And that's really, what is he saying? Is that a kula or a chomer? He's saying it's a kula. Why is it a kula? Because the case that we were talking about was a case where the mazik had ziburis, which was like the idis of the nizik.
Beautiful.
So we're allowing the mazik to pay a lower quality.
Correct.
So by saying the nizik shamina, we're allowing them to pay a lower quality, which is really a kula.
Right.
So what's the kal v'chomer to hekdesh? It's a greyusa by saying that so if you're going to say kal v'chomer lehekdesh, that kal v'chomer lehekdesh also pays b'denizik. So you're saying a kal v'chomer that you're making a kula? Now, maybe you could say that, but, says Rashi, I have a proof that that's not true. Because I know that Rabbi Akiva is machmir on hekdesh. How do we know he's machmir on hekdesh? Because he said before that even if the mazik is a tam, he'd still pay nezik shalom in a case where a head damage hekdesh.
So he's holding like Rebbe Nassia.
Right. So that shows you that he holds that we have to be more machmir with regard to hekdesh, not more mekel. So how are you going to say a kal v'chomer from something that's a kula?
Right. Beautiful. Very good. And the third one, go ahead, va'od.
Va'od ha'amar Rashi tanya behedya meter sedeyu umeter kam yishalim. Meter sedeyu shal nizik umeter kam shal nizik. Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Akiva Aimer meter sedeyu shal mazik umeter kam shal mazik. So we have another brisa that says clearly that there is a machlokes whether or not you pay meitav from the mazik or meitav from the nizik. Right? I think that's what that is.
No, that's 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So you see that Rabbi Akiva holds that you pay. No, 1 second. Rashi's saying something else.
What?
It just to come Rabbi Akiva a mazikai.
Exactly.
Right.
Right. You can't tell me that everybody holds that you pay in the field of the Nizak, and they're arguing in Rebbe Shimon Asi, because this price clearly says that you pay from the field of the Mazik.
Right.
From our text, it's not clear. Okay, lo boy kesavela idiot. So we didn't talk about that. But this price it says clearly.
Right.
Beautiful stuff. Okay. So now in the iyun piece is to say, wait a minute, if you have 3 terutzim, why do we need 3? Why wasn't one good enough? What was the weakness in each one? Okay. But we're not going to get involved in that. But that would be the excitement of going into this piece in depth, you know. But okay. Great. Now, in conclusion, how much time do we have here? How much time do you have? I just want. Yeah. I just want to close up here now. I mean, close up. It's okay. Now, if you look at my chart, so I'm trying to make that roadmap. Now, I even tried to do it with Visio. You know what I mean? It just got a little bit technical. But it doesn't matter. But the point being is like this: the chart is a roadmap that explains the Peshat in this pasuk of Meitav and how we ran into blocks and had to shift the Peshat of the pasuk over, okay, and how also the second part that we learned was how the learning, how the technical aspects of learning produced the result of Nizak and Mezak. And then finally, we had the Kal V'chomer statement that we had to clarify, okay, which was what was the Kal V'chomer, the Hegdish. And again, we were blocked through a dilemma, on the horns of a dilemma, because it looks like horns, because no matter if you go to A, you get to a bad result. If you go to B, you get to a bad result. That's called being impaled on the horns of the dilemma. We got you no matter which way you're going to go. And then what we did was we broke one of the horns, and we said no, that Rebbe Akiva, in fact, doesn't hold Rei, who means that you don't pay for Hektish. We had to move him to, again, a Dochek shift, move him to a Dochek position that he's a Yachid of Reb Menasya, and say that he holds that you pay Tam or Muad, no matter what you damage, you pay Muad all the time when you damage the Hektish. Then we had a possibility, if you got to this place already, there's a machlokus on what you pay for Hegdish, so maybe that's the whole machlokus, and then we push that aside because of various diukim in the text, and also a clear price that says against it. Okay, so that's the beginning layout, okay, of the story, and the conclusion is going to be here that we're in the world of repayment of a debt, and it can only be done through, if you're going to use land, it's only going to be done with the best of either your land or the Nizak's land, but okay, and that's what we're holding up to here. Now, with this information, we're ready for the next step. The next step is, once we understand the internal meaning of this verse, we're going to now have to juxtapose it with the other verses in the Chumash, right? And we're going to have to say, wait a minute, now how does this jive with the Kesef and the Shaveh Kesef? And that will be the next investigation. That's really the essential investigation that we need to go for the piece. But we notice how we keep pushing forward, hitting stumbling blocks, moving, shifting, and taking responsibility for the conclusion. It's like a balance sheet, you know what I mean? We just don't throw it away, start again. We're very, very careful that from now on, this is going to be our conclusion. From here, we go to the next step. Okay, now that we know what we're talking about. Now, what we didn't talk about was the svara of why. Now that we've got the what, where we're talking about, I'd like you to think about the why. Why does the Kodesh Baruch Hu demand that you pay with Meitav? Now, that is not an idle question, because that's going to be discussed in light of the juxtaposition of the two Pesukim. Once we understand this text, this Meitav in juxtaposition to Shaveh Kesef and land, then we're going to start getting into the whys. Okay, so we'll save that for next week, Bezrat Hashem, and we'll stop here. Okay. So anyway.